Everybody, it's your boy Chaz Pearson, and this is the Outlet Forum with my esteemed co-host Chris Camello. What up, Chris?
Oh, I think the biggest story of the night is Emmett Sheehan pitching for the Dodgers, right? Wrong. The late
No,
end of an era, baby. The end of an era.
the Lakers are officially sold, and we will get into everything that has to do with that sale. Also, we'll talk NBA Finals Game 6. Is OKC going to close it out? KD trade rumors. He's narrowed it down to a few teams. Which one is he going to go to? And Chris, we got a friend of the show coming in. Jovan Buha of The Athletic is going to come in and answer all of our questions when it comes down to the trade, NBA draft, everything coming up. So we got a packed show tonight. So let's get right to it. We have no time to waste. Chris, what did you make of the end of this era? I'm going to let you go first because I know you've been inside those under tunnels at crypto, formerly known as Staples Center. You've been in some of these rooms and everything like that. And the fact that Jeannie Buss is completely relinquishing ownership down the line, not immediately, but I gotta go to you first, man. What do you make of the sell and what does it mean for the franchise, not only short term, but long term as well?
Yeah, it was, first of all, I want to say unexpected would be the first word. To say that I was shocked or stunned or anything like that. What's funny is I have my oldest brother Joe, and he's not a big Lakers fan. He does like sports, but not as into it as, like, let's say you and me are. My brother Johnny, who is also a listener of the Outlet Forum, and we were talking about the Lakers eventually selling the team. And I know I've brought it up maybe once on a previous show about this is something that they should consider down the road. I didn't think it would be this year, though. And I think it goes to show you the end of an era, that the game has changed. Sports has changed. Sports ownership has definitely changed. Chaz, when you look at all the teams that have changed hands, not just in the NBA, look at the NFL, look at MLB. It is groups. It is hedge fund guys. It is billionaires. It is, in the case of Alex Rodriguez, a former athlete, or Magic Johnson for that matter. And I think that's what we're seeing. And the Lakers organization with the Buss family was the last of that mom and pop shop owning the team, a legitimate family owning it. I would say the Busses and the Steinbrenners were the last of it. And I suppose if you want to throw Gail Benson in there, but I just don't know how active her family is with the New Orleans Pelicans and the Saints. So I'm excited for the new era. Mark Walter, his resume speaks for itself, Chaz. This guy, if you don't know who he is, just watch the LA Dodgers. And really over the last 12, 13 years, because he has been a big part of that. And he's not only just a checkbook guy, but he is also a savvy businessman who has built up a lot of other businesses, as well as building up the community around these organizations. That's the thing that people don't really know about Mark Walter. He's a competitor. He wants to win. He's dumped a lot of resources into the Dodgers. We know, not a lot of people know this, Chaz, and I want you to speculate on this even further, or not speculate, but explain it further. Mark has also been a minority stakeholder since 2021, right, buying 26% of the team from longtime Buss partner Philip Anschutz, and who I believe founded AEG. And it's the dawn of a new era. I think it's time. I am incredibly thankful for what the Buss family did for the Laker organization, going back to Jeannie and the Buss's kid's father, the late great Dr. Jerry Buss, his impact is indelible. It's lasting. He changed the NBA as we know it. At least he started to. All of the things that he did, from 79 through when he passed away in 2013, 10 championships, dude. 10.
Yeah, man.
In a bunch of different eras. He did an outstanding job. The last 12 years, Chaz, have been rough, to say the least. There's been a lot that have gone on in Lakerville. Yes, there was a championship in 2020, but how things went with Johnny and Jimmy, with taking Jeannie to court, and then, the issues with Magic and Pelinka back in 2017, 2018, firing of head coaches. It has not been easy. So I think now, when you take a franchise that their father bought for $67.5 million in 79, and you're able to sell the 66% majority stake for $10 billion and basically end up a billionaire, you've done
Crazy.
something good. You've done
Like
something good. But I want to get your thoughts on this as well.
the fact that, shout out to Jerry Buss first and foremost. $10 billion is the most that anybody has any group, any transaction, any number that any franchise has been sold for ever. So shout out to Jerry Buss. He bought the franchise for $67 million based on his own personal fortune back in '79, like you mentioned. And now his daughter turns into 10, not M's, B's. And the fact that he was able to cultivate that and have all these ideas, from Laker girls to courtside seats to, just the
Music.
modern version, music, the band, everything, to what we know the game to be, that we take for granted nowadays. That's the reason why the Lakers are a global brand. And that's really the craziest thing to me. You're buying a brand more than an asset itself, because the Lakers don't even really have a bunch of real estate outside of the El Segundo complex, which is amazing, by the way, but they don't own
Right.
Crypto.com Arena. That is a lease that they're actually in to for the next, I think, 16, 17 years, until 2041, essentially. So one thing I want to highlight in all this is the fact that Jeannie Buss is going to retain a prominent role, unlike Mark Cuban, who is said to have a handshake deal. And you see that he didn't have any say with Luka Doncic now donning a Laker jersey. But Jeannie Buss, reportedly by Ramona Shelburne, is reporting that she's going to be having a good say for some years to come. So we'll get into all of that with
Which
Jovan.
is
And
interesting.
I have some good questions about that. It's very interesting because it sounds like that it was written into the paperwork and not some handshake deal. And the fact that, I mean, it makes sense when you buy a company, especially as large as the Lakers are, you want to keep some people in charge so that way you can still run it the way. And the fact that they have a great relationship already as is, and the Dodgers are doing what they're doing in LA, speaks volumes as to why she chose to sell to him. And the fact that he being Mark Walter, had the first right of refusal, already owning 26% of the team as well. So
So
it's just
can I ask you a question?
it's
So
unexpected, man.
no, it is. And I want to ask you a question because I actually don't know. So he's got 26% of the team. He's going to buy the 66% shares, basically buy out the Bus kids, because even though Johnny and Jimmy were no longer associated with the day-to-day, their names are still on the trust. So it's Jimmy, Johnny, Jeannie, Janie, Jesse, and Joey are all,
Yeah.
and yes, I nailed it. And I think an estranged seventh sibling is around there somewhere, but not on the trust. So would he get 92%, if my math is correct, of the stake in the Laker organization?
So the interesting part, I did a little homework, obviously, and
Okay.
just made sure I knew a little bit about a little bit on this.
First time in
Um,
10 years.
you have to have at least 15% ownership of a group or the franchise in order to be the governor, which on paper and within the NBA bylaws is going to continue to be the governor of the Los Angeles Lakers. So she's still going to retain at least 15%
Mhm.
herself, cash out the rest of her siblings, and still be in that role for however many years that they've written into it, until he takes over completely, and
Right.
she probably cashes out and maybe has a lesser role. And we just don't know what the future looks like, because I mean, we heard years ago that Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lore were going to buy the Minnesota Timberwolves,
That
and
got
they still
complicated. Yeah.
obviously got complicated mediation. The original owner, obviously seeing that Anthony Edwards is leading the team to the playoffs ahead of schedule, he wants to, keep on ownership. But Jeannie did this the right way. And the
Yeah.
fact that she has always put the franchise first, in my view, just speaks volumes as to her just continuing the legacy for her father and passing the baton now to Mark Walter.
Absolutely. And I want to say two things. One, it's eerie. Go back to 79, before you and I were even a twinkle in our father's eyes. You had a novice owner with a rookie star coming together. Fast forward, let's see, 79 to 2025, or what is that, 36 years, 46 years later, 46 years later, a billionaire owner, a new owner, Mark Walter, being paired with another future star in Luka Doncic. And obviously LeBron is still around and whatnot, but it's kind of a brand new chapter in Laker basketball all the way around, just like it was in 79. So I just think that's something to look at. The other thing too is for anyone who wants to criticize Jeannie, and I know, Chaz, I've been on this platform and I've said some things about Jeannie.
You have.
I have, and I think I don't regret it because I think a lot of what I said was factual and justified. However, let me say this. I think you're right. Everything that she ever did was always, I think, for the benefit of the franchise, not the benefit of herself. I really think the intentions were usually in the right place. However, as you know, the standard that her father built from 79 to 2013 was always going to be difficult to match. And I want to say that to Laker fans. Yes, there was a mess. I pointed out on text messages, bad signings, bad trades, bad draft picks, bad coaching hires. Take your pick with Jim in charge. Then Jeannie takes over. Then there's a problem with Magic Johnson and too many voices in the room and, too many loyalists around Jeannie. That's what really annoyed me, Chaz. Loyalists. And I don't care if we're talking business, sports, politics. Yes, you want people that you know that you are loyal to and that they're loyal to you. I get it. I totally get it. But it's also important to have people who've done the job, people who will be honest with you and tell you, sorry, boss, you're wrong this time around. I think we need to go this route and delegate to those people the way her father did to Bill Sharman, to Jerry West, to Mitch Kupchak through the years. That is what makes a great owner, the ability to hand the keys off to the car and say, go ahead and drive, Chaz. I trust you in this.
And she did that. She continues to do that.
She did. However, I think in her case, she went too far in that direction of having too many voices like the Ramby, like Tim Harris, like some of these other people kind of undercut her basketball people a little bit. That was my issue with Jeannie, and I think it led to some bad decisions along the way. So that being said, the kids never quite do as good of a job as the parents. And if you don't believe me, ask the New York fans and the Steinbrenner situation. Hal will never reach what George was. And Jeannie and her brothers, I just think we're always going to be fighting a losing battle because Jerry Buss is a legend and someone who did so much, set the bar too high. It was always going to come up short. Your response to
that? I think she could have continued owning she could still be in a prominent role and have a direct and have a direct effect on the franchise for years moving forward. So I think her legacy is really to be continued because in the next few years that she's still governor, she could still win another championship or two, in my opinion, especially given the trade that she just authorized back on February 1st at the helm of Rob Pelinka. So I just and another thing, man, like I want to say this before we get into asking Jovan a few questions. Obviously, we're about to bring him on in a few moments, but the fact that, and I'm not calling anybody out because a lot of people share the sentiment of wanting Rob Pelinka fired and have been wanting that for however many years and have been encouraging Jeannie to sell. And now they've gotten what they want as well. But I just don't like the fact that people want to call for this man's job, and he's done good things and he's done some questionable things, but he's done more
like
good than bad in my opinion. And
that's fair.
Could be the executive of the year twice over in the last 5 years, in my opinion, especially in 2020, getting AD and leading the Lakers after Kobe's death, and then also trading for Luka Doncic and going to the playoffs after revamping the roster the way that he did. So that's just my personal.
Finding Austin Reeves, turning Russell Westbrook into something. I'm backing up your point with some of the good things that he's done. Yeah, I got you.
I just wanted to get that off because the main sentiment that I was seeing was the Lakers have all this money to spend when they don't know the CBA or the second apron, and Rob Pelinka is on borrowed time now that there's a new owner. So I just wanted to address that, but. before you get into it, let's go ahead and have you bring him on because obviously we have a friend of the show, Jovan Buha of the Athletic, uh, is now joining us. Chris, go ahead and take it away.
Well, how are you, sir? Joining us now. Let me give you a proper introduction, sir. Joining us now on the Outlet Forum, Lakers beat writer and reporter for The Athletic. He's also the host of the Buha Block, a new podcast of talking everything Lakers and NBA. Just had a live show or did a on-site show this week, and I've known him for the last 11 years. We've come a long way since standing in line for our credentials at Clipper Media Day back in Playa del Rey, I think in 2014. But it is a pleasure to have on the great Jovan Buha. Welcome, bud.
Thank you for having me. I swear we didn't plan this today to play out like this, but it worked out great.
Man, thank you for coming on. I could not have echoed the same sentiments because when the news hit my phone at around, I think it was about 1:30, 1:45, you may have been tipped off maybe an hour before, perhaps. But what did you make of the news with the Lakers being sold? And just big picture, what does this mean for the franchise, in your opinion, moving forward?
So I got tipped that news was coming of some kind about like 20 minutes before it dropped, but I figured that was going to be like a DFS extension maybe, or maybe some clarity with LeBron on his player option. I did not anticipate this. I go back to last season.
Go ahead. No.
So go back to last season. There had been a little bit of buzz about Guggenheim and the Dodgers ownership potentially getting involved and purchasing a majority stake. But it was unclear if that would be this summer or a year from now, a couple years from now. Obviously, the Buses have been the primary owners for about 46 years now. So there's no indications that was imminent by any means, but it was something that had been floated out there a little bit. So I can't say I'm shocked by the buyer, but I am shocked by the timing of it. I think it's important that this is about a week before the draft, a couple weeks before free agency starts. Lakers also later in the summer have a big decision with Luka Doncic and his extension. So I think the timing of it is important. In terms of the future of the franchise, I think the future is as bright as it gets. I think when you look at what Walter has been able to do with the Dodgers and even the Sparks and investing in those two franchises and just the leaps and bounds that those two franchises have been able to grow under his stewardship. I think you look at the Lakers, and since 2013, I think they've been behind the pack in a lot of regards. They, there's been several coaching cycles where coaches have come out and indicated that they've been lowballed by the Lakers in terms of their offers. There's been, turning over the medical staff multiple times. They're one of, if not the only team in the league that doesn't have an official pro scouting department. And the clarification there is when people hear that, they think, well, the Lakers scouting department is great. And it is, but that's with like college players and G League and you're in Europe. But like in terms of sending scouts on the road and like scouting games, the Lakers are, I think, one of only a few teams that doesn't do that. So you look at some of these other big market teams like the Celtics, the Warriors, the Clippers. You look at the way that those teams have had recent ownership changes or just ownerships that have deep pockets, and the way that they've been able to build out those organizations and leveraging being in these bigger markets. I think that's what you can expect for the Lakers, but they have certain advantages that those other teams don't. Like the Clippers are not the Lakers, right? The Celtics are not the Lakers. The Warriors are not the Lakers. So I think the Lakers, if this can be built the proper way and they could improve the infrastructure. Like right now, they are one of the more barren organizations just in terms of like front office personnel and scouting and all that stuff. They could take that to the next level and compete with the Clippers, compete with the Warriors, compete with the Celtics, some of these bigger teams. I think the sky's the limit for the Lakers, and this could be a juggernaut organization in, I think, the way that they should be and haven't really been for the past decade. So I think this is like one of the best. Yeah. Like I didn't think anything could top the Luka trade this year, but I think this tops the Luka trade.
I agree.
Wow. It's funny. I was just talking. I don't know if you. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And I was just telling Chaz, go back to 79, 46 years ago. And Jovan, like us, was not around then. You had a novice owner who had some big ideas with a rookie superstar in Dr. Jerry Buss and Magic Johnson that basically propelled not just league into a new era. And we are kind of on the cusp of that potentially, where you have kind of a different scenario, but a new owner paired with a superstar on the rise right now, or I should say established, but continuing to get better in Luka Doncic. So I find that very interesting. But you talk about the infrastructure now that Walter brings in, but he's inheriting some things, starting with Jeannie Buss as the team governor. So I have a two-part question for you. One, what is her role going to be? What does team governor actually mean for Jeannie as you see it, or what as you've heard it? And is Rob Pelinka on the clock? Because this is not a situation that's unfamiliar to Walter. Let me give you, I don't know how well you know the Dodgers. Him and the Guggenheim group bought the Dodgers in 2012. They had a very heady and established general manager, Ned Colletti. He lasted 3 years before they demoted him and gave him another job in the front office and hired Andrew Friedman. And we know what Friedman has done over the last 10, 12 years, built up every aspect of the Dodger clubhouse, player development, minor league, etc. Could you see a scenario Pelinka gets some runway before Walter wants to maybe consider getting some of his own people in the front office? Your thoughts on all of that?
So to answer the second
Gave
part
you a lot
first,
to unpack there, Jovan.
Yeah, I do think Rob's going to get some runway, and deservedly so. He just signed a contract extension, and you have to remember, Walter has been part of the Lakers ownership group. He's just been a minority stakeholder, not a majority stakeholder. So he's been involved in the decisions to some extent, obviously not to the extent of Jeannie, who has been the controlling governor now for the past 12 years. But I think Rob, the Luka trade alone, to say nothing of they won a championship under his guidance and him building that roster, the AD trade, there's been some pretty notable moves that he's been able to make over the past 6 years that I think, based on how this last season went, obviously it was not the result that anybody wanted in the playoffs, but I think being the number 3 seed, I think he hit on the JJ Redick hiring. There was a lot of skepticism around that. I know JJ didn't have the best postseason showing, but rookie head coach, I think for the most part, the sample size was pretty encouraging during the regular season. So 50 wins, 3 seed. It was their best regular season since the title year. So I think those things are positive. They swing the Luka trade. That's obviously changing the trajectory of this franchise for the next half decade, to say nothing of this ownership transfer. So I think Rob, I do think everyone will be under a new lens, a new prism in terms of how they're being evaluated. And a lot of times we see with new ownership groups, they come in, they change the coach, they change the front office, they make these tweaks that I don't think they're going to have new owner syndrome just because they already already owns a couple of teams. So I don't think he's going to come in and be like, this is like a new shiny thing that I want to be changing this and changing this. But I do think that there will be, I think one of the weaknesses, depending on how you look at it, could be a pro, could be a con, of the Lakers of the past 10 to 15 years has been just how familial or just nostalgia driven they've been in terms of almost every hire has to have some connection to the organization. And there are some pros with that because they do have this storied history and they have had a lot of success with the characters that they have tended to hire or empower. But at the same time, I think if you look at how a lot of these other top organizations are run in the NBA, I think there's a more pragmatic approach to hiring. And it's not about, do you know the owner or were you a former player or former great for the franchise? It's more about what are your credentials and what can you bring to the table that separates you from other people in the league. So I think there's going to be a more pragmatic approach to building the infrastructure that will be a departure from how the Lakers were previously run. So I think for now, I mean, of course, JJ's under contract for multiple years, Rob's under contract for multiple years with the extension.
Yep.
So I think those two guys are safe, but where will things be in 3 years? None of us have that crystal ball, but I think there will be a more critical lens than perhaps there would have been if ownership just stayed as is. Now to the Genie question, that one's, I'm a little bit confused about that because it's like, how can you,
Right?
you know, I think they're going to end up paying like, I think over $5 billion for the Lakers. Technically, they're not outright spending 10 billion, right? It's the percentage of the 10 billion of valuation that they're spending. So it's going to be about $5 billion or so dollars. So I don't know about you guys, but if I'm spending $5 billion, I want to make some decisions. I don't want to give control to the former owner of the thing that I'm buying. So that's going to be interesting to see how that ultimately goes. Like as things stand, it seems to be she's going to continue to be the governor, be in the governor's meetings, and be the ultimate final decision maker. But like I can't help but think Walter is going to really be the ultimate final decision maker as the primary owner. So maybe she's more of the face.
Jeannie has to answer to somebody.
She keeps the status, right, as being like the governor, the face of it. But I can't help but think when it comes down to making like the big decisions, he's going to have final say.
What strikes me in all this is that they already have a partnership, and it sounds like from what I've read and what I've heard that they already have a collaborative relationship. They being Jeannie Buss and Mark Walters. So it doesn't sound like she's going to be answering to him in that regard, and that he's going to be kind of directing her in that regard. Mark Walter kind of has a reputation of empowering his own people, like Andrew Friedman and Stan Kasten, and just getting your own guys and empowering those guys. Same reputation that Jeannie Buss may have. So speaking to that 3-year period, possibly with how much time other guys have left on their contracts, that brings me up to LeBron James, and he actually has a decision to make with his player option. So tying that in now, obviously Luka Doncic being younger, but LeBron even has the Amazon commercial that everybody's wondering about. What is his decision going to be? And kind of like you mentioned, you got tipped off to something, and could it have been LeBron James news? But obviously it was this big sell. How do you think that ties into his decision? Does this maybe prolong his runway a little bit more with the investment that could be going into the uh, franchise? What do you make of that, and how that ties into LeBron James, the biggest star still of the franchise?
I think they're separate, to be completely honest. Like I think LeBron is going to do what is best for LeBron and what he feels is best for him and his family and his career. And I mean, at this point, he has nothing left to prove. If you think he's the GOAT, he's the GOAT. If you think he's the second best player, he's the second best player. If you think he's the third best player, he's the third best player. But whatever you think of him, his legacy is cemented. And I don't really see, like, barring him winning another championship and maybe that changing some things for some people, for the most part, his legacy is secure. He has the career he has, and people view him through the lens that they view him. So we reported last year at The Athletic, right after the Lakers were eliminated by the Denver Nuggets, that we were hearing from people close to LeBron that the plan was to play 2 more seasons, which would indicate that next year would be his final season. So that has been kind of what's been out there. Not like 100% certain that that's what it's going to be, but it would make a lot of sense for him to retire, be the first player to play 23 seasons, number 23, play a 23rd season and go out that way. So I would, if I had to like handicap the odds, I would think he plays just 1 more year and announces at some point before this upcoming season that this is his final year. But he could certainly play 2 years. I mean, Dalton Knecht just told TMZ another 5 to 10 years. So who knows, right? Like with LeBron, he's always defying whatever our expectations are. But I think my current expectation would either be most likely him just opting in and at that 53.6 million, or potentially opting out and then doing a 1+1 to keep that no trade clause going, and also give him some flexibility to decide if he wants to play a second season or not. But either way, I don't expect him to take a pay cut, and I think that's going to make the Lakers roster building paths a little bit trickier this summer.
Yeah, LeBron's been. It feels like LeBron's has been signing 1+1 deals since since Barack Obama was elected president back in the late 2000s. But speaking of the personnel on the court, everyone's been talking, yourself included, about this offseason, how important it is to address the needs. All I keep hearing, center. Lakers are going after a center. Lakers need a center. Hey, did you guys know that the Lakers need a center? Because I didn't know that. So in your opinion, I'm sorry, Chaz knows how I feels with some of these aggregators, Jovan. You know, they kind of undercut what people like yourself are doing at the ground level, actually trying to cultivate sources. So, and who knows, maybe people can see that about us too. But in your opinion, what do you think is realistic, even with Walter on board now, for the Lakers to accomplish this summer as far as addressing their front court? And in your opinion, should they also go after another 3-and-D guard / wing? Because I thought that was a major issue for them, especially in the playoffs. Your thoughts on both?
I think those are the two big needs for them going into next season. I think if we take them at face value, and this could also be something that is being reevaluated in terms of, I think Austin Reeves was in a really strong standing with Jeannie Buss and with the current ownership and front office, but with new ownership coming in again, we don't know how that might change at all. But if we just take the most recent public comments we've gotten from Rob Pelinka at face value, he called Luka Doncic, LeBron James, and Austin Reeves the three pillars of the organization. Said he still believes in all three of those guys and that trio can work together. So we take that at face value and look at it through that perspective. I think the thing for the Lakers then is, okay, if those three guys are your three guys, those are your three best players, or at least currently your three best players, and they're the three starters. What do you need around those three? And I think the two glaring things that you need around those three are like length and athleticism and defense. So we know one of those positions needs to be the center spot. And that's obviously a glaring need. And really, it's been a need, like, depending on how you felt about AD or even the backup center spot, I would contend it's been a need for like 4 years, but, it's been a need for a while. But I think you also need a wing upgrade, either a guy, it could be a bigger wing, 6'7", 6'8", could also be a big guard, 6'4", 6'5", someone in that like 6'4" to 6'8" range who could defend multiple positions and be your best defender in that starting group. So that also, I think, brings up a conversation about Rui Hachimura and how he fits into all this, because I don't think he is a good enough defender to be that player. I think he's more of a power forward than a wing. So I think that opens up the possibility of him getting moved this summer. But in terms of what's realistic, the big difference between the NBA and the MLB is the salary cap. And with this, the first apron and second apron and all the complications that go with crossing both of those thresholds, the Lakers can't just outspend. They can outspend off the court, but on the court, there still is going to be a salary cap, really, functionally a hard cap with that second apron. And so I think people should temper expectations relatively with the center market, because centers have become more valuable than ever. Teams are hoarding them and not wanting to trade them. The costs are sky high. And the Lakers only really have, if you look at, if we're putting Austin to the side and saying they're probably not going to trade him, it's the expirings of Rui, Gabe, and Maxi Kleba, for one first-round pick, and Dalton Connect. And you have those 5 assets to do 1 to 2 trades with those 5 assets. So like, what can you get with that? Maybe you could get a Nick Claxton. Maybe you could get a Daniel Gafford. It's hard for me to see them getting a player better than that. And we could debate whether that's good enough, but I think that they got to be really careful with how they build this roster, because you also got to factor in like 2026. They're supposed to have a lot of cap space, cap flexibility. Austin's a free agent. You could potentially get your second star then if LeBron retires. So like there's a lot of moving parts here, and I do not envy the challenge ahead for Rob Pelinka.
Yeah.
I know I just unloaded a lot.
Facts. Chris, like I'm ready to go, but like, I mean, I know you got.
No, it's you, partner. Go ahead, fire away.
So here's the deal. I know the Lakers are going to dominate the offseason, but one thing I really care about is where KD is going to land. And there's a lot of variables. He's narrowed it down to Houston, San Antonio, said he doesn't want to go to Memphis. The Knicks said that they were out. I have no idea why. But that's being reported as well. In your opinion, based on your sources and what you're hearing, where is KD realistically going to land? Is he going to land at those 2 teams below in Texas, or is there a dark horse that will emerge at some point that may value KD services a little bit more than the rest of the league?
I think if I had to put a favorite, I would say Houston. I think that they are in more of a win now mode than San Antonio is, for example, right? I think San Antonio has much more of a runway. If you look at Wembanyama, Stephon Castle, the number 2 pick, De'Aaron Fox is in his prime. So that's like the one guy that might not fit that timeline perfectly. But they have a nice young core there of predominantly guys in their early to mid 20s. So you don't have the same level of urgency. With Houston, they also have a lot of younger guys, but I think they're a bit ahead of schedule. They were just a 2 seed in the regular season. They lost in the first round, largely because their half-court offense was awful last season. They did not have a go-to scorer, a go-to shot creator late in games. And just imagining putting Kevin Durant on that team, and they're so loaded that like they could theoretically give up Reed Shepherd, Cam Whitmore,
Green,
a pick, and Green, and like not really miss much from like the core of the roster. And all of a sudden next season you have Van Vliet, Amen Thompson, KD, Şengün, Dylan Brooks, and Steven Adams. Like you could keep a lot of like the Tari Eason. Like you could keep 7 of like the top 9 and add KD and like not really miss a beat. And KD is exactly what they need, in my opinion. So like I think Houston is a team that if I'm them, I'm more like thinking about, we might like our window might be now. Doesn't mean it won't be also 3 to 5 years from now. But like San Antonio, you could argue that with how young some of their key guys are, even if they swing for KD, they might just not be ready to have some of these like rookies and second year guys playing high level conference finals type games. Whereas Houston, I think some of these guys are a little bit older, a little bit more experienced. They have the experience of going in the first round last year. And I think they also don't have the same, like they don't have a Wemby on Houston. They don't have, potentially Dylan Harper could be an all NBA guy one day. So like they might not have the same top end talent. And I think they might need KD more. So between those two, I would lean more Houston. New York, I think if I were them, I would try to get KD, but you also got to remember, like, this dude's 37. He has not been happy in his last 3 stops. It always ends in flames. And that's something that you really got to factor in, is like, how much are you willing to give up for a guy who probably will want out within 12 to 18 months?
Right. Not to mention one playoff series win, 2 playoff series wins since he left Golden State in 2019. And, even if you say, well, take out the 2020 season, okay, that's fine. Still, 2 series wins for a future Hall of Famer, that does not exude a ton of confidence right there too. And you factor the age, like you said, with how injury prone he's been in more recent years. That's definitely something to look at. Speaking of older players, and we touched on LeBron a little bit, he made some comments on the Mind the Game podcast about ring culture. And, Jovan, this is something that's very interesting coming from him, because he has almost based his entire career around winning championships. He has added to this theory of how important ring culture is. So looking at those comments about ring culture and how he says it's too pervasive, and he was citing Charles Barkley and Allen Iverson and Nash himself. And you could list a bunch of others: Karl Malone, John Stockton, Reggie Miller, Patrick Ewing, a lot of guys that have not won championship rings. However, I don't think LeBron is the right messenger for that. And 2, it just kind of feels to me, it's like, dude, why are you moving the goalpost like this? And I just don't understand why now. You're a 4-time champion. You've been to the finals 10 times. Like I just was really kind of dumbstruck by those comments. I wanted to get your opinion on that. And Chaez, you go weigh in as well.
Yeah, I was about to give you go ahead, Villan. I was about
to agree with you.
I think first.
I quickly, I'll just say, like, I think it was a case where I agree with the message. I think it's more the messenger that I think you could poke the holes in. And I will say, though, with LeBron, you got to look at it through the lens of, this is basically him versus Jordan. And I think the primary argument that people, like, obviously that's its own debate, but the people that side on the Jordan side typically refer to 6 rings and also the perfect finals record. So I think it's been a sore spot for LeBron, where I think in a general sense, no one is critiquing LeBron for winning 4 titles only or going 4 and 6. I think it's specifically against Jordan where that record gets poked at or criticized, or the 4 rings versus the 6, or even if people want to argue for Kobe with 5 versus LeBron's 4, that's where I think it gets into counting the rings. And I think he was more so speaking out against that. So I think in general, like, if you're going at LeBron for only having 4 rings, I think you're misguided, and I think you're overlooking how special he is and how legendary of a career he's had. But I get, when you get into like the GOAT debates and the legendary debates of who's the best player of the millennium and all this stuff, like, that's where I think that gets held against him. And I think it's a bit of a sensitive subject for him. But again, I think it's ultimately, when you look at how he's moved in his career, I think it's the message I agree with, but the messenger, I don't know if I can quite get there.
That was my issue as well. Go ahead, Chaez.
I didn't have an issue with the messenger either, in my opinion, because in terms of what he said, it was factually correct, but give him one more and see if he's still saying the same thing, able to say, I got the same amount as, Magic, more than Shaq now, same as Kobe, one less than Jordan, but played all these years. But I think that the thing that bothers me more than anything than just the messenger or even the message is just that he's the only person that is that high on the list, on the all-time list, that I've ever heard speak and say that I'm the greatest, the way that he does. So yeah, it doesn't bother me, but that is something I want to point out. And at the end of the day, he is, in my opinion, one of the greatest of all time. It's very hard to pick a greatest. So me personally, I think the GOAT debate is interesting on its face, but nowhere you're really going to go, long term. So, but
you can't prove it. It's just,
No,
we could just argue it till we turn blue.
And
But
Michael,
you can't prove it.
Right. And Jovan, you mentioned Michael. Michael never wanted to compare himself to the Dr. J's, the Jerry West, the Bill Russells, Wilt, all those guys that came before him. Even Magic and Bird, they were sort of at the tail end of their championship runs when Jordan really started to get serious as a championship contender. So Michael was smart enough to kind of steer clear of that. And I think you can measure this. And I'm glad he brought up Iverson, because Chaez and I have talked about this. The impact that some of these guys leave on the game sometimes goes beyond just winning a championship. The style, the culture, the way the game is played. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if, let me tell you this. If Steph Curry never won a championship, there's no doubt Steph Curry has left an indelible impact on how the game of basketball is now played. You know what I'm saying? But obviously with Steph, he's got that codified in the game. Why? Because he's won 4 championships, and he was there, I want to say, 6 times, right? I mean, yeah. They lost to Toronto and they lost to Cleveland in 2016. So, that's the thing. It's a fruitless conversation. I will grant you guys that. I just kind of thought, like, Bron, bro, ring culture. I hear what you're saying, but are you the best messenger for it? And somebody else pointed this out. Would he have been saying that if that was Jordan, Magic, Kobe, or somebody else sitting across from it, and not someone who not only never won a championship? Steve Nash, unfortunately, never even played in a finals. I'm just wondering if he would have said it with some of those other guys next to him. That's all.
Maybe the one thing I'll defend LeBron on quickly is I think he came into his prime in a different time in media, where that was when the debate shows were starting, right? And social media was picking up around then. So I feel like, though I think he has certainly tooted his own horn at times and called himself the GOAT, or propped up that narrative. I also think, like, he's been compared to Jordan since he was a junior in high school, and like he has not been able to escape that shadow of Jordan to some extent, and that comparison for his entire career. Right. And even around the time he left to Miami, it was like that started to be around the time when Jordan won his first title. There was kind of that it's like, okay, you didn't win your first 7 years. You're not Kobe or Tim Duncan in that regard, right? But like, you got to win soon. And he goes to Miami, and then he loses the first year, and also has the decision backlash. And like, so I think some of this was foisted upon him externally, but obviously since then, I think he has starting around 2016, I think started to come out. Well, that was, the best comeback ever. And then like 2020 was like the hardest title ever. And I think there's been little things where he's planted certain seeds to kind of get certain narratives out there. But I just want to make the point that I don't think this is entirely coming from him. I think part of it's been a conversation he's been forced into. And then now once he's in there, I think he's handled it differently than maybe some people would want him to. But it's just a different generation comparing like those who grew up under the social media era, I think, compared to like the 80s and 90s.
All good points.
Exactly. Well said. We'll get you out here on this one because we can go on that one forever. But we'd be remiss if we didn't ask you about actual basketball on the floor that's happening tomorrow night. So, Jovan, what is your take on the NBA Finals, and do you believe that OKC is going to close it out in Game 6?
I think it comes down to how healthy Tyrese Haliburton is. Not to give you guys a cop-out answer, but I think if Tyrese is 80%, I think Indy has a real shot to push this to 7. I still would pick OKC. I think it's just a matter of, does OKC win in 6 or does OKC win in 7? I think Indy blew their chance with the collapse in the fourth quarter of Game 4. They needed to win that. When you're the underdog and you have a chance to take a commanding lead, like I know that sounds very obvious, but like that they needed to go up more 3-1 than OKC needed to tie the series at 2-2. So, I think there's a chance we could still be talking about like a 3-2 Pacers lead right now. And if Haliburton's injured, we're cracking that door open for a potential 3-1 comeback. So I think it just comes down to how healthy and how right they can get Tyrese and his calf in the next 24 hours. So for the sake of like the basketball fan in me and just wanting an entertaining final series, I'll say Indiana wins and pushes it to 7. And then we got a nice Game 7 and OKC wins. But if Haliburton is as hobbled as he was in Game 5 and just looked like a shell of himself, and then also I think kind of compounded that, became more passive, I think we'll see OKC win in 6.
Yeah, that was my original finals prediction, and I think it holds true. Jovan Buha, outstanding job. Thank you so much for joining us, man. If there's anything you want to plug. I appreciate you, man. Pleasure was all ours. It's been, it's funny. I checked my text messages. It's been 3 years since we last talked. That's too long, man.
Really?
That's too long.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So, wow. So I was very happy when you were, when we got back in touch and everything, and class personified. Every time I saw this guy out there grinding, right before Clipper games, always shook my hand, said what's up. We would bro out for like 10 seconds and then back to work. So this guy's a real one right there. And I'm really proud of everything you've accomplished and continue to accomplish. So keep up the great work, man. And anything you want to plug, feel free.
Just at Jovan Buha on all social platforms. You can read my work at The Athletic, and then be sure to subscribe to Buha's Block, my YouTube channel. Just search Jovan Buha or Buha's Block. Also, you can get it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc.
Awesome.
Absolutely, man. Well, appreciate you again joining the show. We'll see you maybe this offseason, and we'll see what the Lakers are doing after they go ahead and get after it on the trade market. Appreciate you. Have a good one, man.
Thanks, Jovan. Oh, that was fun, huh?
Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah,
great stuff.
You got anything else, partner? You want to tackle or what?
No, man. I think we'll leave some of the stuff. I mean, there's a couple things I could get to, but it could wait until after the finals because that was a lot. And Jovan just dropped that question that he answered in relation to the Lakers. Now, I had a whole lot to say, but I was, kind of waiting on you. I wasn't sure if you were going to ask the question because it was, your question, in my opinion. But man, he dropped a bunch of knowledge on us when it comes to the 5 assets that the Lakers have to make any kind of deal in that regard. So, man, I'm just going to leave it. I'm just going to leave it there for him.
Absolutely. And by the way, Paco Salt, a very much a loyal listener of the show. He said, Rob got us Luka. He also said, does this change of ownership change draft and most importantly free agency? And I think Jovan covered that. And then he also said, thank you for this. So Paco, you're very welcome, man. And thank you for tuning in tonight, along with everyone else in our chats tonight. I know I had a few people on the IG stream and everything like that. So this was fun, man. And let me just say this, give you a clapper vision real quick. I was packing a suitcase in some of these questions, and this dude was unpacking it and doing it very organized and neatly and everything like that, to the point where it was digestible. So Jovan, thank you for joining us tonight. And Chaez, I guess we leave it off with this. Who do you got tomorrow night? Pacers or OKC?
I got OKC.
Yeah,
I
me
got
too.
I got OKC in almost the exact game that game 4 was. An absolute, somebody's going to take an early lead. There's going to be ebbs and flows close in the fourth quarter. Going to come down to a big shot and maybe a couple free throws at the end.
Yeah.
So
I agree. I just think if Hallie is not 100%, I don't care what TJ McConnell did in game 5. He was fantastic. 18 points off the bench. I love what he plays with. But if you're leaning on that, Chaez, it's one thing if it comes as an addition. When you start leaning on some of these role players to have to be great, you're playing a dangerous game. Not to say that Indiana can't do that. If you don't believe me, ask the Lakers in 2009 when they took on the Houston Rockets that were down Yao Ming, down Tracy McGrady, down Dikembe Mutombo, and they were getting their asses kicked by guys like Carl Landry, Chuck Hayes, Aaron Brooks, etc. And they were still good enough to win a couple of games in that series and force the Lakers to a game 7. However, at the end, what happened, Chaez? The stars, Gasol, Kobe, Bynum, won out for the Lakers, and I think you're going to see something like that in this series. So if it doesn't happen in 6, like Jovan said, it'll probably happen in 7. Do you agree with that?
for OKC, yeah, they're winning the championship. The Pacers aren't winning the series at all. It's just a matter of, can you get a miracle in game 6, or
miracles?
If it goes 7, I got OKC by like 50 at home. So
damn, it'll be one of those.
All right, 30.
30. I knew what you meant. Yeah. No, but no, it was really good stuff tonight. We'll see how everything goes tomorrow night in game 6. We'll see what comes of the Lakers. I mean, this was a major shift. I don't think people really realize this. This is organization defining, or I should say redefining. This is the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. It's nostalgic. At the same point in time, we could list all of our favorite memories with Jerry Buss and, even with Jeannie in the bubble in 2020 and whatnot, the highs, the lows, the ups, the downs, the stars that have all come and worn Laker purple and gold. But now it's going to be under the Mark Walter umbrella, the Mark Walter ownership, group and whatnot. And it'll be very intriguing to see what lies ahead with the LA Lakers. So huge day for the purple and gold.
Huge day, and I'm glad we got to cover it with you guys. Now we get to sit back, kick our feet up, and enjoy the end of the NBA Finals, whether it be tomorrow or this weekend. It's coming to an end, and then the real offseason starts. Can't wait for it, and we will be right here. Tap in with us next week after the finals, and the week after we got the NBA draft coming up. We'll be talking about that. Obviously, the NBA draft will have concluded right before we go live. So we'll be talking all things NBA, obviously, next week. We're even going to get into some Caitlin Clark news, obviously, now that she's back on the floor and causing a stir against her colleagues in the WNBA. So appreciate you guys tapping in. We'll see you guys next week as we do what we do week in and week out.